You're listening to Dude Check This Out, Episode 4!
朝の声がグーグル手をつないで
Hello, welcome to Hey Dude, Check This Out. This is Kevin, and
Noah.
that's us. And welcome to episode 4.
Get up the microphone
I
here.
think it's episode 4.
Well, hang on.
We're 4 in, and I don't remember the number.
Yes, it is 4, because we did, what, Akira,
Uh-huh.
Fez,
Uh-huh.
we did American football last time,
Uh-huh.
and now we're doing
Yeah,
this.
nailed it.
Yeah, okay.
Cool. So welcome to episode 4. This is Alice Isn't Dead. This is what I told Noah to listen to. It's a podcast.
You say that more with a Joseph Fink kind of, like, Alice isn't dead.
So let me try again. So this is Alice Isn't Dead, the podcast that I gave Noah to listen to. It's pretty great. If you haven't listened to it, definitely go listen to it. It's only like 2 hours overall?
Like 2.5, 3 hours, something like that.
Yeah,
Each episode's like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and there's like 10 episodes, I think.
Yeah, in the first part or the first season, whatever you want to call it, it's 10 episodes.
Yeah. Did you listen to the second season at all?
Not yet. I honestly just finished the last 2 episodes of part 1 last night.
Nice. But we're going to spoil everything like we always do. So, fair warning. It's pretty great. You should go listen to it. All right. Well, before we get into it, Noah, is there anything going on in your life?
I don't know.
Anything fancy, fun that we haven't talked about in the last 4 hours that we've been hanging out together?
We took a week off because I was in San Marcos helping my girlfriend move.
Mm-hmm.
But in that time, I graduated.
That's
so
cool.
I guess that's a neat thing. So, but yeah, other than that, just
Yeah,
hanging out, doing this stuff,
Yeah.
making podcasts.
pretty good. Yeah. Have you got around to editing any of the podcast yet?
No,
That's coming though.
maybe Monday.
Yeah.
I think I've got some time.
I believe in
but
you.
Yeah,
Cool.
work up on those skills.
Yeah. It'll be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm moving out. I'm excited.
Heck yeah.
About time. Actually, Daniel Mooney, the guy I'm living with, is in the room. You can wave. Hi, Daniel. He's waving at us. And now, Daniel, put your shirt back on. Daniel, your
please.
Your shirt, please. Daniel, please. There's so many nipples.
So much hair.
So many
hair everywhere. What do you use to?
Gross.
What do you use,
shave?
So do you like? Yeah, like do you shave? And if you do you use like an electric razor, or do you like go to like Office Depot and buy like some safety scissors?
Like shears, perhaps?
Because you don't want to like use you have to pay so much money for the expensive ones.
That's right.
Especially if you're getting down in that area.
Oh yeah.
Like that's all those scissors are being used for.
Right? He's nodding. He's nodding.
Okay.
Yep. Giving the thumbs
Excellent.
up. Two thumbs up. Yep. There it is.
There, yeah.
Yep. Cool.
Is that a Sonic the Hedgehog tattoo? Is that a Sonic the Hedgehog tattoo?
Wow, that
I
is.
see there?
It's like right on your third nipple, like right on top of it.
Like the nipple makes like an eye.
Yeah,
And,
it's
well, actually, that doesn't work for Sonic. It makes like his belly. Wrapping. Oh no! It's his feet. It's his feet, right? When he's running really fast, and it makes like the figure eight.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, thanks for being here, Daniel.
Still nodding.
Appreciate it. You can put your shirt back on. Thank you. It is a nice V-neck. It's a very deep V. Very deep. All right, so this
Down
is
to
Alice Isn't. Yeah. This is Alice Isn't Dead. You're welcome. So it was made by Joseph Fink, is the creator of it. Or he writes it. It's produced by Disparition, who's a band. Joseph Fink is also one of the writers for Welcome to Night Vale, which I know Noah has listened to.
That's a good show.
Really great. If you haven't listened to that podcast, or you just want kind of spooky, narrative, dark humor podcast to listen to, it's probably one of the best ones out there. and it's all the only voice in the entire podcast is Jessica Nicole,
Yes.
which is pretty cool. And so the premise of it is, I kind of explained this last episode, but the premise is Keisha, which you learned her name. Like, near the end
Yeah,
of the
it's
episode.
like the last episode.
Yeah.
You learn her name.
So Keisha is looking for her wife, Alice, and she thinks she died, so she goes through like therapy and all that stuff, but then starts seeing her in like the backs of like news stuff. So like there's like tragic new things that happen on the news, and she starts seeing her in the background and realizes, oh, Alice isn't dead, she's alive. She starts going through all of her stuff and finds this like Bay and Creek Shipping was paying Alice all this money that Keisha didn't know about. And then so Keisha gets in, like, quits her job, goes to Bay and Creek Shipping, and starts going around all over the country looking for Alice, talking to her over the radio. In this,
Yeah, like a ham radio.
Yeah.
Like hey, 10-4-9er, but she's talking like a normal person.
yeah. And I think this is one of the coolest things that Welcome to Night Vale and Alice in the Dead does, is it's like, Welcome to Night Vale is all about like coming through the radio. It's like a radio station, and Alice Isn't Dead is over like the trucker radios. So when you're listening to it, it's kind of like you're picking up their signal type deal. So it's like, oh, you know, and I listen to it in my car all the time.
Which is a great way to do that.
Which is a great way. And normally I do it at night when I'm driving up, or not at night, like early in the morning when I'm driving up to work.
When it's still dark. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like role playing the podcast a little bit. It's pretty great. But I think it's a really cool way of like a more immersive like way to listen to it, and like kind of it's easier to like, you know, like get into like the scene of it, or kind of like imagine it, because it's like, oh, I'm here, I'm picking up a radio frequency, she must be nearby or whatever. And Welcome to Night Vale is like, it's a radio station, kind of similar. But it was inspired by Joseph Fink, who, when he would be driving around for Welcome to Night Vale,
The tours.
yeah, Night Vale, jeez, yeah, he had all his tours, and like driving through like in a van through America on like all like the long roads through America, and being like there could be so much weirdness out here that people never see just because
Yeah.
America is so big,
So much empty space.
Mm-hmm. and so that's kind of like what inspired him to make this this podcast. So you can definitely tell that like it's a lot focused on like the kind of the weirdness that happens out there. And I do like that, because I really like Welcome to Night Vale, but this one is a little more creepy, a little less dark humor, because Welcome to Night Vale is kind of silly a lot of the time.
It has a pretty, like, it has its dark moments, but it can be very light on humor.
Yeah. And so it's a little...
have a light sense of humor, not light on humor. It has lots of humor.
Yeah. So I do like it that it's like the second thing Joseph Fink did, and it's a little more like tight and consistent, where Night Vale is very much like all over the place, and you never really know what's all going on, but that's
Because
kind of
there's
the
also
charm.
a lot of narratives in Welcome to Night Vale. There's like all sorts of characters and like their own narratives that you're like, as Cecil's regaling it to, you're like following all these different things, while with Alice Isn't Dead, it's very much like one narrative.
Yeah. And it feels very personal, the whole
Yeah.
story. So, and I do like that it's a little creepier, a little darker, and there's a little humor, but not really throughout the whole podcast.
I think it's mostly just the way that Joseph Fink writes. Like,
Yeah.
everything's just a little playful, but like very descriptive.
Yeah. So I really like it. And like talking about how Joseph Fink writes, I really like his writing style. I think some of the coolest things that he does is whenever he describes something, he normally says like, he'll describe something like, oh, it was really bright outside. Well, no, it was more like a greenish color brightness. Well, not greenish, but more of like, you know, like when you like throw up and it's kind of like gooey and that kind of color, that kind of gritty color, that's what it looked like outside.
Yeah.
And how he does that, it kind of like paints you this picture, so you get a picture in your mind, and then he like takes that and then he kind of like warps it a little bit, and then he takes that and he warps it a little bit more, so like it kind of forces like the person who's listening and like making that mental picture, it takes like what you think it would look like and then you distort it as he writes it, which like makes this like really grotesque kind of weird like type writing and visualization that like it uses the imagination of the listener against them. So like by painting a picture that you come up with an image first, and then you take that image and you have to warp it to kind of what he wants you to think, instead of just like describing this really gross thing right from the get-go, which I think is super interesting. And a really cool like writing technique that I haven't seen anybody else do but Joseph Fink's kind of like one of his staples.
Yeah, it's a very Joseph Fink style thing that's very specific to him.
Yeah, that, and I did like how we'll get into all the specifics here in a minute, but like how they when he described the Thistle Man, that he like at the first time he describes him, and in episode 10 that he describes him the exact same way of like with the translucent fingernails and like all that stuff, and then like when he like takes her and puts her up against the truck in episode 3 and 10, he says like he took my hand like a dance partner, but he didn't like ask where he took it. And how he describes that, he describes it the exact same way both times, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
I just think how Joseph Fink's writing is really great in this podcast. It really shows it off, because in Night Vale it's him and Jeffrey Craner, and it's like a kind of collaborative work, but this one really allowed him to get like very personal with how he writes. And I very much felt like, oh, this is very much Joseph Fink's work, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah, I liked the type of horror that the type of horror isn't so much like Ooga Booga horror, or like demons are coming to get you, blah 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 horror, but it was just very like kind of disturbing. And like when it felt very personal, and like just like the horror didn't really feel like it wasn't like super over the top like Final Destination kind of stuff, and it wasn't like Saw of like gross body stuff, but just more of like really things that like made your skin kind of crawl.
I feel like a lot of his influence comes from like a little bit of Lovecraft with like all the kind of like horror themes, but he has a very like David Lynchian style. Like, you know, you can tell he's watched Twin Peaks. I'll just say that it's very like, it's a lot of normal everyday things, but just tweaked just enough to where like it makes you feel really uneasy. Yeah, especially with like the Thistle Man and how he describes is everything about him. He's the worst. And I do like kind of still just general things about House of the Dead that I just like to gush about, is how like personal the story feels. Yeah, you know what I mean? That like it's always about Keisha the whole time, and that it makes the world feel huge, or like America feel huge, because they talk about like how big it is and how like seemingly disconnected some of the stories are. But at the same time, it feels like very like all the Thistlemen and that kind of stuff feels very personal, especially like when she goes home and they like still like kind of haunt her and that kind of stuff. I hated that.
That episode was awesome.
It's really terrifying.
With like the guy like slapping his like hands together and stuff. It was gross. So I guess like what did you? I've been like talking about big ideas and stuff that I liked about it. But, like, what did you think of Alice is Dead? Did you like it? Did you not? What like themes did you like?
I liked it a lot. So like full disclosure, like I am not super. I usually don't listen to narrative podcasts a lot. Like Welcome to Night Vale is probably like the only one I ever like listen to on the regular. Like I listen to a lot of podcasts, but it's mostly just like talk radio kind of stuff. Because the way my attention span works, it's hard for me to like really like hone in on like listening to audio narrative. Visuals usually keep my attention a lot better. I did really like Alice Isn't Dead a lot. I think because I listened to a decent amount of it like in like before I'd go to bed, like in the dark with all the lights turned out and stuff to kind of get like the spooky vibe. But I think the best time I had with it was when about 2 weeks ago when I was going up to San Marcos to help my girlfriend move, and so it was like on the road on like, you know, the Texas interstate, and I was listening to, I think it was the second episode where Keisha's going through like the small town, but she keeps going through the same small town, even though like that doesn't make sense with the way the roads work. Yeah. So like I would just go through, like I was going through Luling, I think, at the time, and just thinking like, you know, just like the visuals of like, you know, looking around and seeing like, oh, there's that old man, except his face is weird and he's like, no one's looking at me and stuff like that. And it just had a really cool kind of like you were saying, role playing
Yeah.
kind of vibe to it.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. That episode gets crazy.
Yeah,
too,
and everyone gets
but
on fire,
yeah.
and like the guy gets in the van with
that
her.
was a cool climax to
Yeah.
that episode.
For real. That was awesome.
But yeah, overall I liked it a lot. And anything that like I don't know really what I'm trying to say. Like I may not have gotten like all the details just because of the way my attention span works with this medium, but overall I liked it a lot.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I probably won't ask because I really like narrative podcasts because I drive. Hopefully not too much once I move. Right, Daniel? Mm-hmm.
Still just
Put your shirt down. I drive a whole bunch, and so like listening to podcasts is something that like keeps me entertained, and I like
Yeah.
that medium. So I listen to a lot of narrative podcasts, or I have in the past. But I thought this one was because they're kind of short, kind of snippets, and only like 20 minutes and stuff. But I really liked Alice is Dead. I think all the themes and like how Joseph Fink writes everything is like super cool. Like the Thistlemen were like the best and the worst bad guys.
Yeah.
like they were gross.
just totally gross. Just the way that he describes the fingernails, of just being like a yellow, but like
translucent.
like think like scrambled eggs, but like a little translucent and just
and then like once you describe like they get to the place and they're like they realize like
other
there's
town.
they get to the other town, there's like no like bone in their bodies, and it's just all
They're just like shambling
like,
skin,
fat and like skin sacks and stuff.
He's like oozing like black sludge out of his eyes and stuff.
Gross. Yeah, but I did think that like as bad guys they felt like, because you've always seen that like you'll see that guy everywhere and you kind of look at him, because in the same way of like murder horror movies where it's
Yeah.
like you see that guy and he's like it's normal enough to get by, but you kind of look at him like that guy's like really weird, like that guy is I don't know how I feel about him, like he's kind of gross. And like the Thistleman could be one of those guys.
Yeah.
And so I thought that it was like a real good way of like, when you're
Except he's everywhere. He can be everywhere.
that like when you're like driving around and stuff, you see them and you're like, you see people kind of like that. Where you're like, that guy like really gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like I do not like him. And so like you kind of like he writes that in a way of like that could like then when you see a guy like, oh man, like is that the Thistleman? Like is that him? And yeah, also has like supernatural powers. It can like jump into her like bed of her truck whenever he wants.
Yeah.
And like go.
Oh, that was terrifying. I hated that. I was like, what, episode 3, I think, or something? Yeah.
When he's in her back of the truck.
Yeah,
and
in the
then,
back, just like making noises.
Yeah. So gross. So I don't know if you want to go kind of episode by episode and kind of talk about what you liked and didn't like, or if you want to kind of, do you have like any like overarching thoughts or anything like that?
I think episode to episode is good.
Cool. Okay, so episode 1. I have like kind of thoughts about these, but like I'll go to you first. So like, what do you think of episode 1?
Episode 1 was cool. So episode 1 was like mostly just setting up in like her first encounter with the Thistleman, right?
Yeah, that was the one.
Yeah.
That was Omelet. I think is what it's named. And it's like when
Yeah.
he's eating the omelet, and then he goes like takes a huge bite out of that guy in the girl like in the parking lot.
Yeah. That was overall like, because the Thistleman is like the main villain of this part.
Yeah.
And that was just a excellent introduction of like you could tell like there's this very scary thing. It's going to be a persistent problem, and it was really cool.
Yeah. I thought that was, and like I've thought about this in a way of like, so when Keisha sees him, she just like gets in her truck and like goes. And like just leaves that guy to die in there in the Thistleman because it takes a big bite out of him, and then Keisha like gets in her truck and drives off. Like in that moment, like would I have done anything different? Like if some dude was like, "Hey, look what I could do," and like kills this guy in front of me, and it's like, what are you gonna do about it? Would I have like called the police? Would I have done something, or would I have just like gotten in my car and left as well?
I feel like I probably would, just because, like, especially if it's like he's doing that as a show of force toward you.
Yeah,
and that's
right?
just such a like horror movie, terrifying. Like, I just need to get the hell out of this situation and leave.
Yeah, I felt that like this thing, like this podcast, more so than most horror media that I consume, because I don't watch horror movies.
Yeah.
Like I don't do horror movies. I just don't do them. I love horror video games, horror podcasts. Like I listen to some of the No Sleep podcast, which is like another just like horror kind of deal. I like audio horror, and like I like really like video game stuff and like digging into like horror lore and all that stuff. But for some reason I can't do.
One of these episodes, I'm gonna get you to watch a Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Either that or a Final Destination, because those are like horror movies, quote fingers, but they're hilarious.
Yeah.
So they're for a non-horror fan, I feel like those are some pretty.
I think I could handle that.
Check it out. Yeah.
I think I could probably handle that, but I don't know. I don't know, just like demons and ghosts and that kind of just.
Yeah, it's not so much my. I like serial killer horror movies and just like you know, like people dying in like weird and funny ways.
Yeah.
Those are my bag.
Yeah, but this one I felt like I kind of connected with it. Not that I like drive a truck or I've like gone and met crazy people, but like I felt that it was a much more kind of like realistic telling of a horror story where like the main character makes reasonable decisions the whole time. Yeah. So I thought that was
believable character.
Yeah, like a very believable character that I felt like I kind of could identify with, and like more so than any other horror medium, like thought about like if I was in Keisha's shoes, what would I have done in this situation, which was very kind of like cool to pull me into. And this, like that very first one was very much like, oh, I would like to think, oh, you know, I would have called the police or tried to solve the situation, but I probably also would have just got in my car and left.
Yeah.
If this dude's like,
especially since he already seemed so supernatural at that point.
Yeah.
It's like, what are the police going to do?
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I thought that was super cool. Oh, also, did you like how she kind of like in all the episodes there's kind of like two stories going on that they kind of flip back and forth through. There's kind of like the main storyline of like her like being like, oh, you know, this omelet, like talking about the omelet and eating that, and then the Thistleman taking a bite of the guy, that story. And then one where she's just kind of like talking about random stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I feel like that's necessary, especially in this like kind of, you know, this format, because it breaks it up.
Yeah, it kind of adds some pacing to it.
Yeah. You don't want it to just like be this like one long 20-minute story, because then you're kind of lose interest.
Yeah. So, because that was like the one other thing that I forgot to bring up kind of at the beginning, is because it did also kind of like makes you want to hear the next part of the story, because it like tells the story kind of in chunks, and then those chunks are broken up by like Keisha talking about like, oh, I'm driving and I'm like, look at this weird thing I'm seeing on the side of the road, like, isn't that kind of funny? Or like, oh, what's that thing over there?
Or like, just like, I saw this like these two people hanging out today, and like interactions and stuff. And
yeah, it kind of, I guess it kind of like develops Keisha as a character, and it like allows you to see like the like make America and like what she's driving through seem really big, and that she's seen a whole bunch of stuff, not just these like.
She also does that a lot to like do development about her relationship with Alice, because she'll do like oh, like they had some, you know, like candy bars at the gas station that I stopped at. I always remember you really liked candy bars. And just like, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That yeah. So I thought that was a good like kind of pacing tool that he ended up using. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so that's kind of episode 1. Episode 2 was Charlatan.
That's the town. Yeah, the town that she keeps popping up in.
Yeah.
Or driving through, and it's the same town, except it keeps getting weirder.
Yeah. And what was it? It was like the first time she goes through, and the second time everything was caked in mud, then nobody was looking at her, then everything was on fire.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Definitely like, yeah, it was, yeah, everything was like, yeah, everything was just like gross and dirty the second time she went through. And then like, yeah, the third time, just like everyone was in the same places they were the last time she went through, but like everyone just had their back turned to her.
Wasn't there once where everyone was crying as well?
Yes, yeah, that was another one. Yeah, everyone like was just like visibly crying, but they were still doing the same things that they were doing. You're like, this person's walking the dog, this one's like taking care of their lawn, but everyone was just like visibly like tears streaming down their face, and just like faces in agony. I think the second to last one was the town was on fire, and then like there's like the old man that like walks out into the crosswalk, and like his face has been burned through, and you can see like the cavity of his skull that's just like his face is now just flames, and she like panics and just like drives away.
Yeah.
And then the last time she goes through, I think that's when everyone is crying. Actually, I think that was like everyone is like visibly sad, because then the old man is in the truck, like she just appears in the truck next to her, and just like I think that the thing is that he wants to get away from the town because everyone seems to be trapped there in like this endless loop of existence. And then she drives away, and then she looks in the rearview mirror, and the old man is in the crosswalk. He's no longer in the truck.
Yeah.
Because he cannot escape.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. I did think that like
I think as far as like a little like this narrative of each episode, that was probably my favorite.
Yeah. That was definitely a super good episode. And I did think that when he got in the truck, for me, that was like this big like break of illusion of like, oh, like, you know, Keisha has plot armor, she's gonna be fine, like no big deal. And then the guy gets in the truck with her, and I was like, I am extremely nervous now. Like I was nervous, like, dude, he's in the truck with you, because like I don't know if you've like ever picked up a hitchhiker or anything like that. I picked up a hitchhiker one time.
Really?
Yeah, I did. It was this lady and this like druggy guy that I felt very awkward taking, but they were needed to get to. It was like I was at like summer camp.
Pick them up?
I was at summer camp at Choye, so I worked at a summer camp for like 3 summers, and I was in like filling up, about to go home, and this like lady asked me like, "Hey, I'm trying to get to the airport to pick up my daughter because she's coming home from Disney World. Can you like drive me and my husband to the airport?" And he like slept in the back the whole time. And I just talked to her about Jesus and stuff, which was cool.
Neat.
But I just felt
just like hey, like you work at a Christian summer camp.
Yeah.
And I just talked about that.
Yeah, kind of. And I just felt it was very like, I don't know. And in that moment, I just said yes. I don't know. It was fine. I dropped them off, and it was like, I'm okay. Nothing's wrong. I haven't told my mom. She would freak out.
She'd probably freak out. Knowing your mom, she'd
freak out. But yeah, it was okay. But like just that uncomfortableness of like if someone's in the car with you that you don't like or don't want to be in the car, or like maybe not a hitchhiker, but like there's been the times like on Boy Scouts,
like you have to be watching the road and like not paying all your attention to the stranger in your car. That's kind of an uneasy feeling.
Or like another example is maybe not hitchhiker wise, like, you know, like if you're driving with someone that you don't really like, and it's that awkward being like, I don't really want to talk to you, but like we're stuck in this car together, and like I guess we have to talk, but like you're here and I'm here, and this is like just it's uncomfortable and awkward, just like being trapped in a moving vehicle, that like that. So like when the old guy got in the car, I like was super uncomfortable.
Well, especially the way she delivers it, because like she's talking about all this weird stuff that's happening, and then she just stops, and then she just starts whispering like, "He's in the car with me. I don't want to look at him to acknowledge that I know that he's here." And then like she just like gets really quiet and like doesn't want to say anything, just because she doesn't want to like excite him or, you know, like set off like an altercation.
Yeah, super good. Super creepy.
A lot of tension.
Episode 3, that was the one where the Thistle Man was like in the trunk or in the back of her thing.
Like the entire episode she kept hearing sounds coming from the back of her truck.
And like all this stuff like got shredded, and she like had like the flashlight as heavy as a club or whatever. Yeah, that episode probably had my favorite moment in the whole series, when she like when the Thistle Man like first pins her up against the truck, and I guess she says F the Thistle Man. I was gonna say the word, shouldn't say the word. He says like, she's like F the, like he like pins her up against the truck, and he's like, haha, like I got you, I can do whatever I want. And she like kicks and screams, and like she's like F the Thistle Man, like I'm not gonna give up, because like it does like that thing where she like is giving up and like submits to her fate, and then she's like, commit to my fate. She submits to her fate, and then she's like, you know what, like no, like I'm gonna fight back, and then like kicks and screams, and, like claws at him, and like goes in this big, like the like music really hits and stuff, and I felt like very, like
that's when I felt like the soundtrack was like really effective. Like Dispersion was on point with that moment.
Yeah, and that moment I felt very vindicated. I was like, yeah, like you get her, Keisha, like beat him up, and then it like really sets the tone for the rest of the podcast when like it's just like futile, like doesn't matter. Like the police end up coming to save her.
That was crushing.
And then it's like, oh, like you're in the wrong. If this guy's coming around, like you messed up. Like that guy's fine. Like you're in the wrong.
Like she's telling the story, and the police officer just looks at the Thistleman and is like, "Is this true?" And Thistleman's just like, "I don't know. Do you believe this?"
Yeah.
I'm just, dude standing here. Can you see any evidence of this? Whatever. And the policeman's like, "Yeah, okay. Well, bye."
Yeah. Like that was like. It really made like the rest of the series feel kind of like this deal of like it's me against the world and I'm gonna lose but I'm gonna fight anyways, and like that kind of like hopeless motivation of like I'm like I don't have anything to like I don't have anything to lose because I know I'm not gonna win, but I'm gonna fight regardless. Like that whole like that feeling of like that vindication to total defeat to determination to go on anyways, I felt like is a really good example of how the whole podcast like feels throughout the rest of the podcast.
Yeah,
super cool. Episode 4 was the Factory by the Sea.
Yeah. That was what?
That's the one where they build his own coffin.
Is that? Oh yeah.
With like Nicky, and I think it's his name, like Nicky to Nick to whatever. I think that's the guy. So it goes and there's like that young guy, and they brings all the lumber in, and there's like an older guy.
Yeah.
That signs the paperwork.
Yeah.
Then a really older guy where they put together the coffin. Then he gets in the coffin and goes out to sea.
Because that was like one of the only episodes where they show like her like doing her job as a trucker.
Yeah.
Like actually delivering parcels and goods and stuff.
Yeah, that was probably my least favorite episode.
Yeah, it definitely as far as like carrying the narrative on, it did the least. I feel like
it does come back around in the second season, kind of that like the name on the factory, but I haven't like it hasn't been enough to really know what's going on with it. But yeah, that episode I just kind of was like. It kind of very felt like a one-off thing that didn't really pertain to what was going on.
They got the job done.
Yeah. Episode 5 was Signs and Wonders.
That's all the billboards.
Yeah.
Right?
And I like that episode a lot. I felt that one felt very, very personal as well, because I think that's when they like she starts talking about going through like emails and going through like Alice's things and like really digging through all that stuff.
Yeah.
Of being like, hey, like I went through all your things and I'm reading all these emails about like that you sent to me, but you were lying to me because you said, oh, you were in this Holiday Inn in this one town. You specifically said all this all these informations, and there's not a Holiday Inn in this town that you said. So like you were where were you actually going? What were you actually doing? You were obviously lying to me this whole time, kind of deal. So that episode felt super personal to me.
Yeah. That there was one particular moment that really stood out to me when like she's looking at all the billboards and like wondering like what is like, because you like I feel like as I drive through the interstate on Texas and I'll just like see some billboards sometimes and it's just like really strange stuff. Like she points out the one that just says hungry, like it's just like in really bold text, just hungry. Like I feel like I see that like especially for like advertisements for like there's a gas station chain in Texas called Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of like their billboards are just like the Buc-ee's logo, but then it'll just say like need a fuel up or like beavers are neat or like so like have a beaver snack or what, and then just says like how many miles it is till you get to the next Buc-ee's.
Yeah.
But it's just like a lot of you see a lot of strange billboards out in like the middle of the nowhere America. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that was just a really cool way to make that feel weird, especially like I think it's one of the last billboards she sees that like she sees the billboard and she doesn't really describe it, but I think she says she doesn't even like remember what she saw, but she just remembers that she cried. Like it just made her like like
Yeah,
just start like tears streaming down her face.
Yeah, I think it wasn't that the one where it said like "Go home, Chipmunk" or something like that?
Yeah.
Because it was like she was reading like nicknames that like Alice would call her, and then one of them was like "Go home, Chipmunk." Is like what it said. So it was like talking about like, oh, like Alice, either Alice put that up there for her, or like one of the Thistlemen put it up there trying to like discourage her to go home. And she got all sad. And then and that's where we found Sylvia.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the next episode.
Yeah, Sylvia's awesome.
Sylvia is awesome.
I love
So their whole relationship, I feel like I got a real like Last of Us vibe, the PlayStation 3 game Last of Us, just with like, you know, older adult with like this little like kid with an attitude, but like is kind of like on their own. Because like, does Sylvia have? They don't really ever cover like parents or anything.
They said that her mom gets the reason that Sylvia's out there. They might go into more detail in the second season but like Sylvia's mom was murdered by the Hungry Man.
Yeah. Because they call him the Hungry Man.
Yeah, who is the same guy as the Thistleman, who all the billboards with those names on them were like victims of the Hungry Man.
Yeah.
And so her mom was a victim of the Hungry Man, which set her on the same path that Keisha's on, about like just roaming around America trying to find people or the Hungry Man, or just like she's also seeing all the weird crazy stuff that Alice is seeing that you can't explain, but is like just kind of out in the world or out in America, and like kind of the lost spaces out on the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought Sylvia's awesome.
Sylvia is awesome.
Yeah, and I think Jessica Nicole does a really good job of changing her voice to like represent all the different characters.
Yeah, she has like a real country drawl whenever she's like is narrating Sylvia's responses to her.
Because she's the only voice you hear the whole thing. I guess at the very, very end of episode 10, you hear a different voice. Just like a smidge. But like the whole series is just Jessica Nicole. But she does a really good job just doing a Thistleman voice or her voice or Sylvia's voice. It's really cool. So you can like definitely tell. Like, and you get a lot of personality out of all three characters with just her voice.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Because that episode is like her and Sylvia just kind of hanging out.
Yeah, it's mostly introducing Sylvia.
Yeah, which leads up to let's break into a police station.
Yeah, because they're breaking into the police station to get information on the company that Keisha's working for.
No,
or it's where
it's information on the Hungry Man.
Yes, and information on the Hungry Man. That's right.
Yeah, because like Sylvia in the Sylvia episode, Sylvia's like, I met up with this guy, and this guy was going to give me information. Because, like, the government doesn't want people to know about the Hungry Man or the Thistleman because they're, like, kind of covering for them or something. But, like, one guy's like, well, I have information for you, but I'm not going to tell you. And then they break into a police station, which I felt like was awesome. Yeah. And, like, it definitely has that like, he does a really good job of being like, if I was going to break into a police station, what would it be like? What would I feel? And I felt like I would feel very much as Keisha felt, in this sense of, like, I'm kind of doing things, but I'm literally winging everything, and I'm always panicking. Like, at all times, I'm panicking. And somehow they somehow get out, but like...
It turns out a police station is a really bad place to break into.
Yeah, but I felt like they did a really cool job and a good job of, like, making you feel that way. Like, when she's like, I jumped through the window and crashed through, like, opened the window or crashed through the window or whatever, and I got all the papers off of his desk, and now I realize I have no way of getting out of here. I thought like that was something that I think I could definitely see myself doing. Oh, okay, cool. Like, in video games and stuff that happens all the time where you're like, oh, this is the way in, cool, and you get in, and then you're like, oh crap, I don't know the way out of here.
Yeah, but at least in video games you get like, oh, there's a lighting queue over here, I probably need to go that way.
Yeah. And so I feel like if I was going to break into a police station, something like that would probably happen to me, where I was like, okay, well, like, I'm just gonna do this, and I do it, and then, like, my adrenaline's pumping and stuff, and then I'm like, oh crap, now what? Oh no. So I thought they did like a really good job of like painting that, and like when I felt like it very related to how they were feeling and that kind of stuff. And I thought like that was like a good like kind of that the last episode was pretty chill, and then it like really rises up with like breaking to the police station, all that stuff.
That was a good action episode.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. And then the other town, and then going home. The next two episodes.
The other town is mostly just like she gets to like a town and starts talking about like the Thistleman or the Thistleman, and like hey, there's like this other town, right? And then like from the information she got from the police station, and they're like, oh, you're not supposed to talk about the other town, and then like she hides and a new Thistleman shows up.
Yeah, it was crazy. I did feel like that was a really cool episode of like her coming into her own and like being like, all right, I've seen all this crazy stuff, like I can handle things now. Where like she was like going around like, you know, kind of like talking with people, trying to get information out of them, and then like when some dude said to hide, she's like, all right, like I'm not gonna question, I'm just gonna hide. And kind of like having those like instincts that she's built up throughout her time going through all this stuff to kind of survive against the Thistleman.
But then that's all kind of broken down once she follows that Thistleman to the other town, and it's just an entire town of Thistlemen, and then she's just like, okay, this is too much for just me to handle. I give up. I'm going home.
Yeah. And
that's like the end of that episode, which leads into Go Home Again, where she's home, and like this out of like, so it's a horror series, right? I feel like this episode more than any other episode like made me feel scared.
Yeah.
Or at least like got like to the like level it related the most to things I'm scared of the most out of any of these episodes, because like she goes home and like she keeps feeling like the presence of the Thistleman around, and she also like the clapping
and
and the whoo, like
that was so creepy.
Always hearing just like little sounds that like, oh, was that the Thistleman, or what? Am I just, you know, like, is the house just like settling or whatever? And the thing that scared me the most, because I actually feel this way sometimes, is when she was in the shower and she just feels like there, because I hate showering when like no one, like I'm the only one at home, because that's just such a vulnerable time, because you shut yourself off from the awareness of anything else in the house. So like, and there's just loud noises happening right in your face, so anything could be happening out there. And specifically when she says that she can feel like the Thistleman is in the shower with her, but she can't like ever like pin down a visual of him, but she can feel him there. And that I hate that feeling more than anything, because I already have like a decent amount of anxiety, and just that feeling is just the worst.
Yeah, I think her, like that episode is one of my favorites, might be my favorite of the whole series, just because she gets that moment where she's like, oh, like there was an entire town of Thistlemen, and then does like the realistic thing of like, okay, I give up. Like I like one Thistleman, I thought I could handle one, but like this is out of my league. I'm just gonna give up and go home. Like, fine, you guys win, I'm gonna go home. Like, that's a very human thing to do. And then that next episode of just like totally breaking her down was like, I thought was like super creepy, like one of the creepiest episodes for sure. Like the fact that like he has like weird like noodle arms that he can slap in front of him and all the way behind him,
because he has no structure in his body.
Like that was like, oh my gosh. And like the sounds that he makes isn't like raw, like roar, like big scary sounds, but just like, ooh.
Yeah, it's just kind of weird and kind of like prodding at her.
Yeah. And then when she finally like makes this, there's like, all right, well, like obviously they're just toying with me, they're going to kill me, this is just them having fun. Well, fine, like I'm gonna go like at least take out some with me if I'm gonna die at all. Like if I'm gonna die, I'm not just gonna sit here taking this lying down. So that episode I think is just the coolest. It's like the creepiest episode. Like I also like, I don't have nearly as much like anxiety about like being alone and that kind of stuff, but I will feel like when I'm by myself and I'm home alone, like especially here at like my parents' house, like if I'm downstairs, I'm by myself, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed now, and like turn all the lights off downstairs, and I come upstairs, and as I like click on one light to walk, and then like, all right, I'm gonna turn this light off, and like going to my room, like turning on and off the lights is like super creepy, because you're like, all right, like I'm gonna go in my room by myself and go to sleep, and there's all this just empty space now that no one is in or should be in. If you hear any noises, you're like, oh gosh, is there someone here? Am I by myself?
Yeah.
So like that, I do relate to that. I thought that episode was like super creepy and like really, really cool. And then the final episode is like the Thistle one, where she goes in, Alice shows up, and then she like brutally murders the Thistleman by tearing off his face, and it's just like a bunch of goop and
pounds him into goop, and
it was so gross.
It was a good like climax or like into this to the season, well, I think the thing that I like the most, the thing that they kind of brought back, is that she talked about freedom in the same way that she talked about it in the first episode, especially like it's a terrible, she says it's a terrible freedom.
Yeah. Like, not all freedom is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's like she's free of like the relationship, free of this problem, but now, like, what do you do? Like, it's just kind of this existence with no drive.
Yeah.
And that's why she came on the adventure in the first place.
Yeah, and then she's like, oh, like, I'm not tied down to anything. Like, I'm free. Like, I'm not tied down to any specific place, any specific person. Like, I'm not tied down to anything. I'm free to do whatever, go wherever I want, do whatever I want. But, like, I don't have meaning anymore.
Yeah, what kind of existence is that? Just kind of floating through life.
And like the Thistlemen say, like, oh, like, we are the price for that freedom. Like, we are the price for.
Oh yeah, they are the hungry man because they eat like the empty time during like road trips and stuff like that. That's a very Americana kind of like specific horror thing.
That like, oh, like, you know, like, everyone goes on road trips and like, oh, like, there's all this open distance and space and all this freedom and all that stuff, but like there's always a price, and we are that price, that we like eat people, or like we'll kill like random people on the side of the road and that kind of stuff and all that weird. And then like I thought it was very cool, like how like she has like the heather oil on herself and stuff.
Oh yeah.
And there's like, and he's like, oh, like that spell, you think that spell, like old spell, is gonna protect you, and makes them seem like almost ancient and like a more of a force of nature than they are like some like product of something else. When and just the word spell, really, I thought it was a really like interesting choice of word, because it was like, oh, like it was like there are like spells and stuff that work with these guys. Are these guys magic? I don't know. And like seem very kind of like much more so than just like kind of the personal like weird goop monsters that were. And when he describes it, like the whole town was all covered in like a thin thing of oil, and like everything was just rotten.
Yeah. Just, like the entire, she describes the entire town of just being like in this thin layer of like grease and oil. And
gross.
Yeah.
So, and then I felt it feels so good when she smashes his head in. Like, she like puts her knees on his chest and like beats his face into goop.
Yeah.
Like, ugh. It was so gross, but it felt. And like when the army Bane Creek's army shows up and like saves the town and stuff. Like, doesn't save the town, but saves Keisha. I thought it was very vindicating for her to do that. But then at the end, it's like, all right, we'll just like keep doing what you're doing. Like, that's it. It feels very
yeah, well, because then after that, it's just like, well, that was it. Here's the next thing you need to do for delivering stuff with the truck. Okay, see ya.
Yeah. So I think it was like a really good way to end it, in the sense of like you feel like almost nothing was accomplished, but like Keisha is a very, very different, radically different person than she was at the beginning.
Yeah.
But like at the end, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm kind of back at square one. And like kind of with that thing of like, yeah, it's not hopeless, like I won, I beat the bad guys, whatever, but at the same time, like, what does that mean? Did I really beat them? Or is like,
because also she found Alice, like,
or Alice found her,
or yeah, well, Alice finds her, but then Alice is just like, I'm doing things that are important, that like for the greater good out here, and I need to be gone. Like, you can't be with me for me to do the things I need to do. So like, I know you love me and you want to be with me, but I can't be with you right now. I have to go.
Yeah. So
like, stop trying to look for me.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
Not a happy podcast.
No.
So overall, yay, nay?
Yo, definitely yay.
How many thumbs out of 3?
Out of 3, thumb to 2.5, 3. Like, definitely, it's a great podcast. I'm just not a narrative podcast guy, but with that being said, I liked it a lot.
Are you gonna listen to the second season? I won't be mad if you say no. I love it. So yeah, if you like narrative podcasts, definitely check it out. If you don't like narrative podcasts,
the last episode definitely sets up in a very like what you want to listen to the next part kind of way. So
yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah,
I'm listening to it. Next Tuesday, the new episode comes out. I'm pretty stoked.
Hooray.
It's gonna be great. Yeah, Daniel.
Yay, nay.
Yeah, yays, nays. 2 thumbs up.
And a nipple.
And a nipple. Perfect. Okay. All right. We're running a little longer than usual.
A little bit.
So what do you got for me?
Okay, so you brought it up last time that like we keep going to different mediums and stuff, and we're waiting to see who's going to
Yeah, we
be the
haven't.
first one to repeat.
We haven't repeated yet.
That's not this week.
Oh darn.
We're going to the world of comic books. And I was trying to decide which one to give you, whether I wanted it to be like a superhero thing or like a weird creator-owned thing. My favorite thing about comic books is that, like, people have a certain, preconception about comic books is that, like, oh, it's all superheroes, dudes in capes, punching other dudes in capes and whatever. But comics, much like any other medium, can really be anything. Like, there's horror comics, there's crime comics, there's, just like slice of life comics. It can really be anything. And those are like I love dudes in capes punching dudes in capes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who doesn't?
Yeah, but I'd say a lot of my absolute favorite ones are the kind of more creator-owned personal stories. And the one I'm going to recommend is one of the best of those. So
Is it the Flintstones?
The Flintstones is great. I will probably recommend that at some point. The current Flintstones comic being published by DC is one of the best things being put out right now. No joke.
Yeah.
But what I'm going to recommend to you is Jeff Lemire's Essex County.
SX County?
Yeah, Deus Ex County. No,
Oh, okay.
Essex County. It's like ESSEX.
Okay.
Essex County. It's a creator-owned book by Jeff Lemire, put out by Top Shelf. It's kind of big. I think it's clocks in around like 400 pages, something like that.
Jeez.
It's a big phone book comic. But Jeff Lemire, I think, is probably my favorite writer working right now. He wrote some books before this one, but this is the one that put him on the map. This is the one that made him a name. This is kind of his grand opus. Jeff Lemire is a native of Canada. He grew up there, and this book is very much a story about people in small town Canada. Specifically, he grew up in actual Essex County, and this is a story about families, about childhood, and just about the kind of weird spookiness that is associated when living in a small town. Jeff Lemire, when he's at his best, is telling very personal, family-oriented stories, and this is one of my favorite ones of those.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Essex County. 2 weeks we're doing
Gotcha.
it.
400 pages in 2 weeks?
Yeah, but the print's pretty big. A decent amount of pages are just 2 or 3 panels, and not even all of them have speech bubbles.
Gotcha.
So it's
And I read comics pretty fast.
yeah. So this one you could probably burn through it pretty fast.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for listening. That's pretty much it. Daniel, do you have any last words before we go out? No?
Nods is
Are you sure?
shaking his head.
Any hand symbols you want us to describe for them? He's looking at his hand. He's holding up his hands. He's sad. It's like he wants to do surgery, but not.
sterile.
He's
You know that for sure.
Daniel, okay.
He's standing up. He's crouching. I don't know why he's doing
Daniel,
that. And
are you
that-
going to pounce?
I think he's growing wings out of the back.
Oh my-
out of his back.
Daniel, are you-
Oh man! Oh,
We should go.
he's flying away. We're in your room right now, but he just jumped out of the window and he's flying away.
All right.
I guess we'll see Daniel later.
All right, bye, Daniel.
Bye, Daniel.
I want to live with you still, even though you're gone. Okay. Well, this has been Do Check This Out, and I guess I'll have to fix the window. But that's all we got for this week. So see you next week. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for being here, Daniel.
What a cast.
What a cast.
What a cast.